A blessed morning, everyone, especially to our instructor, Ma'am Maricel Capa, Lord Ethel De Castro, Mary Joy Apigo, and I are your reporters for today. We are going to discuss about external and internal criticism of history and historical methodology in Philippine history. But before that, let me introduce to you what is our topic all about. At the end of discussion, you, my dear classmates, will know what are the two ways used for evaluating historical sources and the difference between internal criticism from external criticism to validate the authenticity of the sources. Historical data is obtained through the method of evaluation from historical data and is of two kinds, external and internal. External critique is about ensuring the validity or legitimacy of the results, often known as lower criticism. Historians use references at any stage. Usefulness, durability, objectivity, or precision are judged. Sometimes these choices are easily taken, such as seeing memes. Sometimes the process of analyzing a historical is more nuanced. Historical analysis asks the question, how did things used to be? Historical historians are faced with two main problems when analyzing documents: primary versus secondary sources, and external versus internal criticism. Internal criticism or constructive feedback is the researcher's effort to recover the text's sense. This is the hermeneutic process in which the scholar interacts with the text context rather than the document's exterior features. While external criticism is a mechanism whereby historians decide whether a source is credible by testing the source's authenticity. Internal critique looks at an authenticated source's credibility after it has been subject to external scrutiny. Now, let us focus first on what is the external criticism all about, to be discussed by Ms. Apigo.
External criticism. External criticism is the practice of verifying the authenticity of evidence by examining its physical characteristics, consistency of with the historical characteristics of the time when it was produced, and the materials used for the evidence. Examples of the things that will be examined when conducting external criticism of document include the quality of the paper, the type of the link, and the language and the words used in the material, among others. External criticism is the aspect of the historical method that deterred the veracity of the source is questioned. The text is to sort of like an inmate at a pub. Its authenticity need to be checked by paleographic and diplomatic critic where possible. In time and location, it must be localized. It must be known if it remains exactly as its creator left in its present state. To test its validity, the student must ask himself if it is what appears claimed to be. It is important to interpret the document from any possible perspective. A defining factor in its validity would always be its agreement or disagreement with evidence identified from the other genuine source from the same location and time or on the same subject. Other signs of genuineness, or if its lack, are the writer denial of details which he could have known and which should have been stated in the text, or the document of events which he simply could not have known at the time of writing. A text that had been proved likely to be true by these checks will also be increased in validity by an investigation that will return to its original state or situate the history of its reality.
And now, let's move on to internal criticism, to be discussed by Ms. De Castro.
Internal criticism. looks at the content of the source and examines the circumstances of its production, looks at the author of the source, its context, the agenda behind its creation, the knowledge which informed it, and its intended purpose. Entails that the historian acknowledge and analyze how such reports can be manipulated to be used as a war propaganda. Validating historical resource is important because the use of unverified, falsified, and untruthful historical source can lead to equally false conclusions without thorough criticism of historical evidences. Historical deceptions and lies will all be probable. Internal criticism is when you have to prove that the document is what it says it is. For example, if the document in questions are Rizal's letter, you ask if the handwriting was Rizal's or if it is a translation. Is the thought faithful to Rizal's original? It is an actual document. You question provenance. How did it make its way from Rizal to present's owner? And usually, questions like this are only asked if the document at hand is continuous. Many primary sources are already common knowledge to historians. Of course, after knowing that it really came from Rizal, the next text to employ is external criticism, which is knowing if the text of the document is actually saying the truth, provided you have other sources with which to counter-check it. It is also the element of the historical process that is deterrence. Minimizes the historicity of the paper. It doesn't belong to absolute needs to prove the genuine, even forgeries or documents with truncated truth which contains material available. But before anything, inference is admissible. It is important to verify the evidence found in the text. The essence of the sources, the experience of writers, and the factors present at the time of writing must be carefully determined in order to determine the importance of this information. In addition, the evidence supplied by the author or writer have to be firmly identified as having happened exactly as stated. The study worker must be imbued with a sincere determination to reach the truth and be oblivious to the outcome of his examination or critique insofar as there resides beyond his control. In dealing with any source, whether it is a volume already in print or a text historically used or unused by scholars, what at most important is that the student jealously protects himself against the danger of seeing whether he agree with preconceived inference.
We are now approaching the end of our discussion and we just want to highlight one key issue. As a student or as a future educator, we need to study use of primary sources because it exposes the important historical concepts. We also become aware that all written history reflects an author's interpretation of past events. Therefore, as we read a historical account, we can recognize its subjective nature. And that is the end of our discussion. Thank you for your attention and we hope that you have learned a lot. And that's all. God bless.